everyone, I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Kilo23. This is the second part of a series of 2 videos that will go over everything you need to know about the Systema full tune-up kit for the MP5. Now this video will show you how to install the Systema full tune-up kit in my ICS MP5 SD6. This is already a great weapon, but with the Systema MP5 full tune-up kit, it's going to be just that much more awesome. The Systema full tune-up kit goes for $150 on Airsplat.com. I highly recommend buying from them. They have some of the least expensive parts on the internet, and we all know how expensive airsoft parts are getting these days.
Alright, the Systema full tune-up kit for the MP5 has quite a few parts to it, so let's go ahead and get started. A few things you're going to want, first of all: a rag, or a cloth or something. Your hands are going to get fairly greasy working with all this airsoft grease, so you really want to wipe your hands off quite a bit. Seeing as your hands are going to get greasy, you're going to want some grease to do that with. So I recommend some Mad Bull grease. I got some Mad Bull ear grease. The stuff is black. This is what this black stuff is in here. It's not dirt or any kind of grime or anything. And I've got some Mad Bull cylinder grease here. You might also want to keep around a can of ICS ear grease. This stuff is good for the cylinder too. I like to kind of combine grease. It makes the gun and the grease a little more efficient. As you can clearly see, I've got all the parts removed that the Systema full tune-up kit comes with, so I can go ahead and install all those. The first thing you really want to do is install the selector plate, so let's go ahead and do that. The selector plate is this guy. So flip your gearbox over. Insert this the correct way. It should just slide in. If it's a little tight, you might have to sand down the edges a bit, but it's pretty rare that it's tight. It really just depends on the brand of gearbox shell that you have. Next up, you're going to want to take your semi-automatic lever. Make sure you keep all your screws from the gearbox. You don't want to throw any of those away because the Systema full tune-up kit does not include those screws. As you can see, it's right there. It can make sure it can move freely. If it doesn't, you might have to sand the little notch down, but it's really rare that it doesn't move freely. Go ahead and take the correct screw that fits in there, and take a really small Phillips head screwdriver and screw it in. And when you screw it in, you want to make sure you have the screw as far down as you can, but not too far down that it doesn't turn easily. Next up, go ahead and flip over your gearbox shell and find your little, itsy bitsy spring that was supposed to fit right here. Should fit in there pretty easily, and it can easily interact with all the parts. Make sure your spring is sitting on these 2 pins here. If it's not, then it can easily come out during installation and possibly damage the spring and bend it. For you people that are wondering, this is a Classic Army stock gearbox shell. My original ICS gearbox shell cracked quite a while ago, and so I had to replace it. The wiring system I've got in here is an element wiring system wired to the back, and I've got Dean's connectors on it. Next up, we should install the internal safety catch here. It's not very hard to install at all. Stick that up through the back. Install your spring here and make sure the smaller end is against the wall of the gearbox. And you want to just feed it the spring around this little wedge looking dude. Once you've got that installed, you can go and install the little screw there and make sure the spring is set properly so that it kind of springs back a little bit. If you want, you can go ahead and install your trigger and trigger spring. Make sure the little end of the spring here sits in a little hole in the trigger. Just kind of float that in there. Should stay. If it doesn't, you might want to put it in later. I have had that happen on my M16 a few times where it doesn't want to stay, so you have to really put it in at the end when you assemble the gearbox shell. The next thing you want to do is install the bushings and gears. And seeing as it comes with helical gears, you're going to want to make sure these things are shimmed perfectly. You don't want any axial movement on these things at all, or else it's going to wear down your gears and it's going to give you a really loud whining sound. And trust me, it sounds terrible. I've had it happen before, and it's just nauseating. So since shimming on helical gears does take a little while, I went ahead and shimmed these guys. Now, seeing as this comes with bearing 6mm metal bushings. They fit really easily into the bushing holes that are already drilled out. Now, this is where you want to grease your gears. So the easiest way to grease your gears is to take a Q-tip, remove the gears, and just put a light coat on the bottom here. If you put too much, it'll just make a mess and really slow your rate of fire. So a light coat, easily applied. Like I said, I like to mix lubricant a little bit. So I'm going to put some ICS gear grease on there. Now make sure you lubricate each side of your gearbox, so that means that some of the grease on the sides of the gearbox shell itself do get on the gears, so it just makes for a better performing weapon. Okay, we've only got a handful of parts left to install, so let's go ahead and start with the easiest stuff first. The cylinder, cylinder head, nozzle, and tappet plate are already going to come pretty much assembled in here. You just need to grease them up. Make sure you lubricate every O-ring on this thing. The more grease on the O-rings, the more it'll help. Now make sure you lubricate each side of your gearbox, so that means that some of the grease on the sides of the gearbox shell itself do get on the gears, so it just makes for a better performing weapon. Make sure it's sit nice and snug, make sure the edge of this is flush with it. And I also like to make sure that these holes are pretty much even. Just a little OCD about that for some reason. Roll that in there and it should sit pretty snugly. Now, remember, you've got your tappet plate spring here. You can go ahead and stick that on the little rod that's sticking out of the bottom of the tappet plate and hook it onto the little notch that sticks out in front of it. Next up, you've got your piston. Take a flathead screwdriver and pry the O-ring out of the piston head. Silicone lubricant all over it. Stick it back on and install it. Now you also want to lubricate your gearbox rails a little bit, so you can shoot some grease onto there. That way your piston will work a little bit more efficiently. Before you install the spring and spring guide, you really should install the anti-reversal latch. Take out your gear there. Put it back, make sure you got the spring in properly. And it should just sit there. If not, you might want to put some thick silicone grease under it so it creates a little bit of an air bubble and it'll stick in there a little better. You're also going to want to have some kind of shaft that you can stick through here. It makes installing the spring a lot easier. Press it, make sure nothing goes flying out. Adjust everything so it fits in the proper hole. And we're good, you just gotta install the screws. In all of my previous experience with helical gears, the rate of fire has been decreased by quite a bit, but with these Systema helical gears, the rate of fire has been pretty well sustained considering. I'm using a Gardner high-speed motor on them with a 9.6 volt Nunchuck 1600 mAh battery. I'm going to use some .25s in here because it really does affect accuracy, range, and on a cardboard box, penetration power. So let's give it a shot. I'll do some semi and some full auto. Right there, that is excellent. I'm really happy with the Systema full tune-up kit. I really recommend it to you guys. It's for sale at Airsoft.com for $150 US. I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo23. Thanks for watching, guys.